How y'all doing this morning? I'm a walker, so camera guy, go wide because I'm going to take the entire, not because I'm fat, because I want to use the entire stage. Forgive me a few things. I'm not really a morning person, so I'm going to try and get behind this. I don't drink coffee, so I'm going to try. I also have like 100 plus slides I'm going to try and do in like 10 minutes, and then I'll just quiz you afterwards. And it shouldn't be too bad. What I wanted to do is set the context for today, and I wanted to look at three periods. I wanted to take a look back and place social media in its historical context. I then want to talk about the current state, and then I want to do some future spotting. So I have 3 sections. There's about 4 subsections in each, and we'll just fly through this. So if we look back, I want to talk about 4 things, which is we are social animals, stories connect us, would you like a coffee, and the role of technology. And, we're social animals. I mean, it's something that Aristotle recognized early on, that for us to have a society and for us to have a social compact, it meant that we needed to believe in something that was larger than ourselves and participate in something that was larger and more meaningful. And in fact, he goes on to sit there and say that if you're not willing to do that, you're either a beast or a god. And what we oftentimes forget about social is that it's about the human beings. It's the relationships. We get so fascinated in what is a Facebook strategy, or what is a Twitter strategy, or do we need to be on Pinterest, or how do we get on Oink, or what are we doing on Path, that we forget the fact that there are common themes and things that we should hearken back to. This is the Facebook visualization of the connections between those 800 million people, right? I think you saw the article recently that said 6 degrees of separation actually has constricted. It's actually fewer than that. Was it 3.27 or something to that effect? That's the connections that we have in this hyper-connected world. So stories connect us. I think that we lose sight in social media oftentimes that it's the stories behind the objects that actually connect us. And we know what storytelling does. It explains origins, it communicates tradition, it delineates taboo, simplify and provide. But really taking this back, this was all about me being able to communicate with somebody else. A cave painting was my way to sit there and write something and then have that person and groups of people be able to understand that and ultimately kind of talk and convey. And we see that really heavily around the campfire, right? The campfire, we connect with each other, we pass on, we pass on tradition. We also, it's the way that we bond together. This was an interesting photo. It's a son and a father at the first space shuttle launch, and the son and the father at the last one. And he had a really interesting quote. He's like, I was surprised the photo would touch so many other people. It's one of my fondest memories and childhood experiences. Well, we realized that it would touch other people because what it was a universal story. It was a universal story in the sense that we all have moments within our history that we've done something with our parents, and it allowed us to go back to that touch point and say, wow, I wish I could recreate an event with my parent, maybe my father 30 years later. So the universal binding, the photos were the way that the story was actually communicated. It was actually shared on Flickr and then ultimately went viral. Would you like coffee? And I don't mean the Starbucks coffee, but I actually mean what coffee houses started as. Coffee houses started as ways where news was shared. You'd go collectively. The newspaper might actually be read at the coffee house. It was a way for you to have a discussion around the news. This is Lloyd's of London. It actually started as a coffee house. It was a way for merchants to talk about insurance and liabilities, and it ultimately evolved into that. And that's what you're also seeing within these communities, is the communities are about connections and allowing each other kind of be able to have these really intimate discussions that span time and space. And in a more modern way, you're starting to see some co-working. The upper right is actually outside co-working at Shake Shack. But it's a way for folks to come together and actually connect and talk. But they're also, every single one of them has some digital device, so they're actually putting out some kind of digital exhaust. The role of technology. From the printing press on, you guys know this. I mean, the Pony Express, Missouri to California was this pathway. Again, the sphere of influence was as fast as that pony rider could ride, and that's all I could share, right? I could write a note, it would go on that, but then the mobile phone and mobile devices and radios came along, and it meant that I could start talking and communicating with more people and more people and more people. And then ultimately, you're starting to see kind of CNN report, which is now I have all these devices and I can share my stories with the world. So that was a really quick view of how social actually has been contextualized throughout history. We just don't see it in that framework because we see Facebook, but we need to step back and understand that the reasons why these technologies work the way they work is because they're actually tied to other times in our history and how humans communicate. So the current state. Timelines rule the day. Play the algorithms. What's your superpower? And shifts in analytics. So timelines rule the day. We communicate stories oftentimes through timelines. This is the evolution of the universe. We're seeing this in social television. This is Go Miso. Folks check in and have real-time conversations as they're watching television. And so there's a real-time timeline for each of these shows online. This is my profile. This is the timeline. This is the new timeline that everyone talks about. I think Walt Mossberg kind of asked, where was it? And Facebook says it'll come out December 15th. What I want to show you on this is, one, it changes the way, so it's more of a storytelling platform. So as I add things, this long ribbon on the side actually is what the page looks like if you were to scroll down. I've turned my profile public, and I have 111,000 subscribers. I don't know why folks would follow me. I'm not really kind of interesting. But folks are, and what I'm seeing is I'm actually seeing higher engagement than folks do if they have a Facebook page of 1 million or more users, because people want to connect. So for this little Earth-like planet found orbiting right distance for life, on the profile, I got 1,000 likes, I got 220 shares, I got 194 comments, but I drove almost 9,000 visits to the story and almost 15,000 page views. And that's just from my little post in Facebook. And what Facebook is actually doing, and we'll talk more about it in the algorithm, is they're privileging the news feed. They're privileging frictionless sharing. And you'll also hear this from Andy later in the day as he talks about Open Graph and the profile. This is another interesting site where real time I take pictures of what I eat. And normally it was, let me connect to some database and it'll tell me the calories. This actually goes out to my social network, and you all start voting on whether or not that was a good thing for me to eat or not. So when I had that red velvet cupcake last night, y'all are probably sitting there saying, you shouldn't have ate that at 1 a.m. And then what it's supposed to do is help condition your behavior, because it's a way that you're broadcasting out, and hopefully you'll make changes in that. And you'll start to see, like, you get a healthy meter. And again, that goes back to something else that we'll talk about when it's the analytics. So what's your superpower? What I mean by this is, we'll often see something and we don't understand necessarily the powers that are hidden behind. And so just like with Clark Kent and Superman, we don't necessarily know, what's hidden. And that's the same thing with the iPad. The iPad has built Twitter in. And so now the credentialing happens with the device. You don't need to necessarily worry about having the credentialing happening in your app, which means now the device just automatically pushes out to Twitter. You can take advantage of that. So it's this hidden capability, this embedded capability that we as publishers and media companies need to realize, how do we now create unique experiences that can take advantage of this hidden superpower? You see this from the Washington Post social reader. it's inversed, right? Because they're taking their content, they're now putting it out into Facebook, but it's the frictionless sharing. It's the fact that there's triggers happening, and when someone starts to read something, that goes out and is broadcast out in the ticker. Well, that changed the intimacy level of how we actually communicate. No longer is it, Nina, did you read this article? It's, Nina, can you believe what they said in paragraph 6? I can't believe they're trying to get away with that. Intimacy level changes. And they're using the power of Facebook in order to do that. Instagram, big kid on the block, built on Foursquare. The location database in Instagram is actually the Foursquare database. So they're leveraging another platform in order to power what is it doing. And so they only have to focus on making the photo experience the best experience. They don't also have to worry on trying to create a geolocation database. Play the algorithms. I also should have warned you guys kind of cuss a little bit, and it's going to come in the algorithms. And essentially, if you don't understand the Facebook algorithm, y'all need to fucking wake up. Because it's affecting everything, and we don't have control over it. So I'm showing, we play it on search, we do it on page, but this is what's happening in Facebook. How many folks in the room can define what that actually means? That's the Facebook algorithm. I know digital companies that are constantly quizzing their employees, what's the algorithm, why does it work the way that it works? So let me just walk you through a small scenario of how it's changed. So pages used to be the thing, right? We all had pages, we put inferences into it, we get the post, we have great impressions, we're getting great engagement, and we're like, this is awesome. We're totally seeing it. How many people have seen a decline in the number of impressions that they're getting from Facebook posts? You're all going to raise your hand because you're all seeing it. And you're seeing anywhere from a 5x to 10x decline. Well, that's because Facebook has changed the algorithm to where they want to privilege frictionless sharing, not what's coming necessarily from the pages. The other thing that happens is stories are now being collapsed thematically. So if someone talks about Christmas, it could be a Washington Post article. It could be the fact that here's my Instagram photo of my Christmas tree. It's all getting collapsed into Christmas, and it's sitting there saying, here's 3 people, and oh, by the way, 12 other people talked about Christmas as well. Your content may be hidden in that, oh, by the way, 12 other people may have talked about it. The other thing is how many people think that they're getting all the content in their news feed from all their connections? You're not. Facebook is filtering that for you, and they're filtering it based on your interactions. Do you comment? Do you like? And based on that, they're sitting there saying, if you don't interact with that person, that means that relationship isn't a strong relationship. Since it's not a strong relationship, we're going to deprecate how often you see that. This isn't about just putting a page up and putting content or putting the like button. It's also understanding the science of what's happening within these platforms that we don't control, that we don't own. This is social flow. I know some of you guys use this, but this is another way that the algorithm works. In Twitter, what social flow is doing is it's following what your Twitter users are saying, but it's also following what's being said in Twitter. You preload it with content, and based on a threshold, if that content is being discussed, it will release it in the middle of the conversation. So, for instance, if you do something on True Blood, and a lot of people are starting to talk about True Blood, not the Sunday going into the show, but the Monday morning. If you have content that's related to it, it's going to release it at that moment and make that content relevant because it's looking at the algorithm of what people are talking about. The trending feeds in Facebook, in Twitter, those are conversations that have already passed. If you're trying to optimize content for that, you've missed the boat. You want to be at the upswing of a conversation, not the downswing of a conversation. So algorithms are so important nowadays. Shifts in analytics. No longer is it about like Omniture, let me go get page views, let me look at aggregate data. I want to see data in real time, and whether or not that's from the user side. So Oink allows me to rate everything within a space. It goes beyond Foursquare. It's not about just checking in. It's about actually literally checking into everything and rating everything that you experience inside Starbucks. What happens? You start to see top items. You start to see latest Oinks. So you're starting to see this on the user side, that the user side is controlling the analytics, and they're seeing that, right? Vimeo, users see how many plays they have, how many folks have liked their content. So now as users, now as media companies, if we create an experience for someone, someone's going to want to know how active they are within that. So you need to kind of turn the analytics back to them as well. This is Chartbeat. It allows you to look at what's happening on your site in real time. Not the delayed Omniture, not the delayed Google Analytics, but literally what is happening real time. Where people are coming, what's the engagement? Are people reading? Are they actually writing things? Where are they coming from? Where are they going? So this is what the Huffington Post kind of capitalized on, right? They realized, let's look at analytics in real time, and we can adjust our offerings, we can adjust our pages, we can make sure that actually that's the DL, not what we thought in the morning that was going to be the editorial lead. Mixpanel is another platform which allows you to connect to your site and literally track any type of behavior, and you start to get analytics. Someone likes something, someone clips it, whatever kind of actions you have on your site, you can tie it to a dashboard to see if it's actually happening, and then you can start to, change behavior. You can start to modify what's happening on the site with it. So that's kind of the current state. There's a lot of disruption, but there's a lot of opportunity. And there's a lot of opportunity when we start to look at future spotting. So in future, it's ambient awareness, collective intelligence, smart environments, and identity and reputation. So in ambient awareness is we always have wanted to let people know that we've been someplace. So Kilroy, World War II, the soldiers wanted to let folks know, hey, we were here, realize that. Well, I go to Huffington Post and I start to see what my friends have read. And as we talked about earlier, that exchange between Nina and I has now changed to intimacy, and now I can actually engage that conversation in a much different way. Color, I'm going to go to first version of color, not up the blow up and not the fact that they got 45 million. The idea was ingenious. The idea was the fact that we're all bound by space right now and bound by a common event. And if we were to take photos, it would go to a collective kind of sharing place. We would all become elastically bound for that moment in time. Once we left this place, we would be no longer connected. Because that's the challenge with social media as well. There are billions of objects created every single day, but how do you actually bind them together to tell a story? Every single one of us has probably, or some of us in here have checked into Foursquare, others folks have tweeted, other folks have sat there and checked in on Facebook. All that is going out separately. How do you start to bind that together? And they realized that there was moments and experiences that you would actually want to bind and allow folks to say, actually, this was a collective shared experience. This blows my mind. So this is plain flight AR. Does anyone have this on their iPad? It's an app that you can put on your iPad. You then take your iPad camera and point it at the sky, and it will tell you the planes that are over you and the routes and where they came from. Like what was their originating airport, right? Because there is data out there, right? In this geolocated, there's all this data out there. Now imagine if you started to connect stories to this. This is just what the airplanes are broadcasting out. You can start to put stories around that. You can start, so increasingly, we can connect data to geopoints. So breaking open the pages of our magazines and saying, we're going to actually create real-time experiences as you walk through the world. You're going to bring us with you. And it can trigger and say, oh, did you know you're here? And this is what that information is. Collective intelligence. This is an awesome flash mob pillow fight. The only reason I have this in it, my presentation, is I love the girl here that has the free hugs and looks like she's going through PTSD as like, what the hell just happened? Was that a good idea? So we see collective intelligence because you have 800 million people, but are you connected with the right people? So when you're looking for a question, you're looking for an answer, that's where Quora comes along. You can ask a question, and as people answer it, other folks start to vote, and start to push up people who are actually experts and hopefully, ultimately, start to get the right answer. So it's this understanding that you have all these connections. How can you actually make it worthwhile? Amazon Mechanical Turk, you just could crowdsource. MillSnap, again, is doing that. Let me take a photo of it. It's going to a database, and you don't have to say what it is. I took a picture of Guinness, a pitcher of Guinness. It told me it was a pitcher of dark beer and told me how many calories I had. So there's this kind of collective intelligence that's out there. Smart environments. We're seeing this whether it's from skiing. This was a Goala Nike thing. As you skied, it would check you into different slopes. At the end of it, it would tell how far you went. This is the Melt. How many people have heard of the Melt or have been to the Melt in San Francisco? You order online, you get a QR code, you walk in, you scan the QR code. That immediately starts the cooking process and the charge process. Your order goes up to a leaderboard, and you watch your name go to the top when the order is ready. The environment's becoming smarter. And this is card case from Square. I can go in, I actually have this connected on my iPhone, and I can go into establishments, never take out a credit card, never take out anything and say, please put that on Robert Michael Murray. Their device will sit there and say, Robert Michael Murray is actually transmitting the fact that he has an open tab with us. So we'll collect it. So it's now created that experience. It's frictionless. So now stores can focus more on the relationship of providing customer service without having to focus on the awkward exchange of cash and credit card. You saw Apple kind of change that. Identity and reputation. There used to be an age in which the armor you wore, the shields you carried, would tell people who you were, where you were from, what your class was. Now we go online and we don't necessarily know that. So increasingly there are services trying to tie to real identities to say, this is who Howard is, this is who Nina is, this is who MJ is, and this is what they do, this is where they come from, and this is how you should see them. You hear this in the clout score, how much clout. You're starting to see this even in kind of emoticons in Path. I know this is an old version of their UI, but it starts to say, who is this person I'm dealing with, and what is their effectiveness? That's fantastic for us, because if we actually know who our users are, their behavior, what their influence is, it now allows us to create unique experiences knowing that we can define some really cool experiences. Ambient awareness, those 4 things. Ultimately, I think it's a clay shirky. When we change the way we communicate, we change society. We shouldn't be scared of social media. We know the origins of it. Let's understand the platforms and understand why they work the way they do. And let's break the way that we see things and start to create new experiences. So thank you for sharing your time with me today. The panels throughout the rest of the day are awesome. I'm actually looking forward to the deadly sins. I probably commit 6 of them every single day. So you can connect with me every single place. Facebook, LinkedIn, Goala's no longer, Plancast, Twitter, and thank you all again.